Guys, this is Shelby with the Rogers Public Library. So this week for Full Steam Ahead, I wanted to talk to you about hydra. So we're going to be talking about two different types of hydra this week. One that you might have heard about in stories and you're a little more familiar with, and one that's maybe new. So the first is sometimes called the Lernaean hydra, and this is the one from stories about Hercules, right? So this is a vase or a piece of pottery that has a depiction of Hercules fighting the snakes or the hydra. If you've seen this movie called Hercules, then you'll know there's a hydra in that as well, right? And so in a lot of senses, a hydra is a lot like a dragon, right? It's say snake-like or crocodile-like or lizard-like. But the main difference is in the number of heads it's had, right? So this guy here, he has I think 9 heads. Right, so 9 heads or 7 heads are pretty common. And the reason for that is because instead of being like a normal snake, and if you cut it in half, it dies, if you cut the hydra's head off, it grows 2 heads instead, right? And so it kind of multiplies. So sometimes this is called the Lernaean hydra, after a place in Greece where Hercules supposedly fought this creature. And there's a lot of parallels between the Lernaean hydra and a story about this guy whose name is Ninurta, who lives in Babylon and fought a 7-headed snake, right? But the other type of hydra I want to talk to you about is just a hydra, right? It's actually a scientific name of a genus of a bunch of different little creatures called cnidarians. So cnidarians are things like sea anemones and jellyfish and hydra, right? So they're full of jelly. They don't have bones, but they're predators. They eat other animals. And they do this by stinging them with things called nematocysts. This is what a hydra looks like, right? So if you've ever been in here into the library and you've seen our aquarium and you've seen the sea anemones in it, it looks a lot like that, but the difference is this is much, much smaller, right? Hydra are usually just a couple millimeters long, and they have these big tentacles that you use to catch fish, including fish that are much bigger than them, and gobble them up. But the reason that they have their name and that makes them kind of noteworthy is that if you cut a hydra in half, it will grow into 2 new hydra, right? Right, just like the monster in the story with Hercules. And this is kind of related to a couple other things they do. One is called budding. Budding is basically when an organism grows a new organism off of it, right? So like yeast, for example, a yeast organism will grow super, super big and then eventually split off into 2 organisms. And hydra do the same thing, but the difference between yeast and hydra is that hydra are complicated, multi-celled life forms, not just simple single-celled fungus or a single-celled fungus, right? And the reason they can do this is related to their DNA and a special thing in their DNA called FOXO. So basically, in order to grow, for a person to grow, they have to make new cells. And to make new cells, they have to copy their DNA. And there's things in your DNA called transcription factors that tell you how often it gets copied and how many times it can be copied. And this transcription factor in hydra called FOXO says that it can be copied indefinitely. And that means that they don't grow old the way that people and other animals do. And they're what are called biologically immortal. And that doesn't mean that they don't die, right? Hydra die all the time in the wild, but they just don't die from senescence or growing too old, which is, really neat. But the craft for this week, just like this vase that I showed you guys, right? We're going to be making our own little Grecian vase. This is one that I made kind of based off this design, right? So it's orange and black mostly, which is a common color theme in a lot of different ancient Greek pottery. So for this, what you're going to do is you're going to fold a piece of paper in half, right? And then you're just going to trace onto it. So this is a shape called a krater. Right, it's specifically a type of vase used for mixing stuff together. So I traced it on, fold it in half, and now I'm going to cut it out. And the reason you cut it out, or you fold it in half, is so that the sides are so that it's symmetrical. So we fold it out. This is our base or crater. We're going to glue it to the page. So that's the easy part. And then the hard part is choosing what type of design you want to have, right? If you want lines and shapes, or if you want to try to do like a picture, kind of like what I did, and what are on a lot of different Greek bases. And I thought it would be cool to actually try to draw this kind of hydra on the vase instead of the kind that Hercules fights. So I'm going to use this as my example. I'm going to get a nice black permanent marker. Okay, so there's our hydra. And then I might add a couple lines and stuff, just a little details to make it a little more interesting. Yeah. Alright, so it's a little border. It's just a little more interesting, and you can get a lot more complicated, as complicated as you want with this, just like you would on any other picture. And yeah, that's our craft for this week. I hope you have fun and you learn something, and I'll see you next Monday.